Now, without a doubt, the most versatile bait there is a jig. And the reason is because there's so many different jigs. It's a bait that catches big fish. It's a bait that you can fish in finesse situations. You can fish it out deep. You can wind it. You can fish it through grass. You can do just about anything with it, and it catches huge fish. Why do you use a jig though? Well, when you look at a jig, say in a swimming pool or in really clear water, you look at that bait. Look at how those strands kind of pulse. Yeah, first bass of the day. Fishing a jig, you know, you can always get some bites on a jig around docks. This is a Strike King skipping jig. It's just a really easy bait to get up under these docks, even with bait casting equipment. Not a big one, but it's a fish. You know, when you're thinking about rods for a jig, almost always you're going to fish a fairly stiff rod. In other words, not a light action, maybe a medium action, just depending on what you're trying to do with it, but a lot of times a medium heavy. Because basically when a bass bites this, you've got to go through the fish's mouth and this weed guard's got to collapse. And so you've got to put enough pressure to catch him. Basically, when he gets it in his mouth, you're pulling hard enough. So a lot of times I like a medium heavy. My favorite rod to flip is a carbon light. I either like a medium or medium heavy. And if I'm casting, a lot of times I'm gonna throw a Platinum Series 7.4 because I like that rod out in open water. It's a little bit longer rod and it works really well also. I love catching them throwing a jig early in the year a lot of times. Catch them on the shallow part of docks, you can catch them on the deeper part of docks. Nice fish right there. You know, when you look at these jigs, they're all different. This one's a skipping jig, this is a football jig, this is a structure jig. I could also have a swimming jig. There's a bunch of different head shapes and they all act a little bit different. It depends on what kind of cover I fish it in. And so when I'm pulling each one of these along the bottom, they'll react just a little bit differently depending on what kind of cover I'm pulling them through. Now, another thing you can change on a jig is the trailer. This right here is a baby rage crawl, but I've got a lot of different options. This is a junior chunk. This one right here doesn't flap as much. And so a lot of times I'll throw the chunks in really cold water. I've also got a bigger rage crawl. This is just a regular everyday rage crawl. It's a lot slower presentation. And then this is a menace. It's a fast little trailer. It really moves fast. So it just depends on the situation on what you might throw and maybe the size fish that you're thinking you might get a bite on.